Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be exploring this audio file called Ancient Knowledge, Part 6.3, Lost History, Phoenicians, Alphabet, Symbology, Ashkenazi, Mythology.mp3.
Okay.
It's quite a mouthful.
It is.
But we're going to be kind of looking at this idea of hidden messages and symbolism and how they relate to personal truth. And right off the bat, the speaker makes this bold claim that the Old Testament is actually written in code.
Right.
And he believes that this code contains secrets about physics and light waves, even atomic weights.
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It is.
And he suggests that you really need like a solid foundation in certain areas to be able to even begin to decode these messages.
Right.
Kind of like if you're trying to grasp advanced math without first understanding the basic principles.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like you need that framework to build upon.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're just kind of lost in a sea of symbols and numbers.
Right. And he doesn't stop there. He goes on to suggest that this code, if you can crack it, it reveals the truth about how everything works, the whole universe.
The grand unified theory.
Pretty much, yeah. And he even suggests that films like The Wizard of Oz and Star Wars contain what he calls occultic messages.
Interesting.
And that's, related to hidden spiritual knowledge or practices.
Yeah.
So it's this idea that there's this hidden layer of meaning in everything all around us, and it's accessible only to those who know the code.
Uh-huh.
But then he also mentions that nobody wants to know the truth. What do you make of that?
Well, it seems a little contradictory, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, why hide knowledge if it's meant to be discovered?
Right.
Maybe he's suggesting that the truth is unsettling.
Okay.
Or even dangerous.
Yeah.
And that most people prefer comfortable illusions to facing reality.
That's a really thought-provoking point.
Yeah.
And this theme of hidden knowledge and power dynamics also comes up when he discusses the Phoenicians. Now, as you know, the Phoenicians were the ones who developed the alphabet.
The foundation of written language as we know it.
Exactly. It's a system that has shaped our world.
Right. I mean, think about it. Words like phone and phonetics come from the Phoenicians.
It's amazing, isn't it? And remnants of their alphabet still exist in the Maltese language.
Yeah, that's a great example of their lasting impact. The Maltese word for fish, set.
Set.
Okay, it directly descends from the Phoenician word. It's a direct link to that ancient language.
Wow, so we can still see these echoes of the past in the way we communicate today.
Absolutely.
But if we kind of connect this back to the speaker's ideas about codes, could they be suggesting that language itself is a form of control?
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I mean, the Phoenicians, by giving us the tools to communicate,
Right.
they also give us the tools to manipulate and influence.
Right.
Perhaps the speaker is suggesting that those who control language, they control the narrative.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. And that kind of leads us into this next area where the speaker focuses on symbolism.
Right.
He seems particularly fixated on specific hand gestures, especially the 3 fingers out,
Okay.
which is often associated with Jesus, the crucifixion.
Right.
And he sees this as evidence of Masonic influence in Christianity.
That's a bold interpretation.
It is. It is.
The speaker seems to believe that the Masons have actively shaped religious architecture and music to imbue churches, temples, and mosques with specific frequencies.
Okay.
Using symbolism to make things happen. It's an interesting idea, right?
So they're implying that symbols hold power beyond their visual representation.
Right.
That they can actually influence reality itself.
It's like a hidden language.
Yeah.
That shapes our perceptions and experiences.
That's powerful. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The speaker emphasizes this idea of walking the middle path.
Okay.
Which is a concept that resonates strongly in a lot of spiritual traditions.
Right.
What does that idea mean to you?
Well, for me, it's about finding balance.
Okay.
Avoiding extremes.
Right.
It's about challenging ourselves to transcend that black and white thinking, which the speaker seems to believe is a tool used by those in power to keep us divided.
To control us.
Exactly.
They specifically link this middle path to the path of Christ.
Okay.
Suggesting it leads to inner peace and true understanding.
Right.
But how does that align with their earlier claims about, a hidden code in the Bible and potentially problematic interpretations?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely raises questions about the speaker's overall message.
Right.
Are they suggesting that organized religion, as we know it, is flawed? But that the essence of Christ's teachings, those core principles, they remain valid? Perhaps they're urging us to engage with these texts critically,
Okay.
to look beyond the surface,
Yeah,
to seek out the deeper truths they believe are embedded within them.
that makes sense. It ties into their emphasis on seeking truth independently,
Right.
even when it comes to religious texts.
Mhm.
Not just blindly following the opinions of others.
It's about questioning everything
Exactly.
and forming your own conclusions.
They even acknowledge that there are potential issues with the Bible's interpretation.
Right. They specifically mention the King James Version
Yeah.
compared to other versions that are translated from different manuscripts.
It's like they're encouraging us to become textual detectives,
Uh-huh.
right? To dig deeper and question the narratives that have been presented to us.
Exactly. To not just take things at face value, but to really look for those inconsistencies and discrepancies,
Hmm.
and to be discerning. I mean, they even caution against blindly worshiping Yahweh, claiming to know the difference between Yahweh and the Father God, which, might seem like a bold statement,
It's a very strong statement.
but it speaks to their emphasis on personal revelation and direct experience.
Yeah, they seem to be advocating for a more personal, less dogmatic approach to faith.
Right. It's not about blindly following rules or doctrines.
Mm-hmm.
It's about that inner journey.
Exactly. It's about finding your own truth.
Right, not just blindly following what others tell you.
It's about trusting your own intuition and your own connection to something greater.
Exactly. And it reminds me of what they said about the Bible. They acknowledge that there are different interpretations, different versions, and even suggest that some parts might not reflect the true Father God at all.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
And then they start to talk about their own struggles.
Right.
They even mention demons and nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
Are they simply trying to add drama?
Maybe.
Or is there a deeper message there? Well, I think their personal struggles, they definitely add a layer of authenticity to their message.
Okay.
It makes them relatable. It's
Right.
like they're saying, hey, I've been through the ringer too. I've faced darkness and doubt,
Right.
but I've come out the other side. It's like they've been to the depths, as they say, and they're using that experience to illustrate this idea of a spiritual war,
Okay.
a battle against forces that are trying to keep us divided and in the dark.
And they're not afraid to get personal. They really put themselves out there.
They do. It's a vulnerable and courageous thing to do.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, how can we discern genuine insights from subjective biases?
That is a great question.
Because everyone has their own experiences and their own interpretations of reality.
Right.
So how do we know what to trust?
Maybe it comes down to personal resonance.
I think so.
What rings true for one person may not for another.
Right. It's about finding what speaks to your own soul, your own experiences.
It's that inner knowing.
That feeling of truth that resonates deep within you.
And it seems like the speaker is encouraging exactly that.
Yeah.
They repeatedly urge listeners to believe their own thing,
To trust themselves.
to walk their own way.
To forge their own path.
They even compare themselves to Jesus,
Interesting.
saying he did the right thing by coming to earth as a servant to set people free,
Hmm.
but emphasizing that each individual must forge their own path to liberation.
So it's about finding your own unique expression of spirituality,
Right.
your own way of connecting to something greater.
It's a very powerful message of empowerment,
It is.
encouraging us to take ownership of our spiritual journeys.
To be the authors of our own stories.
But it also raises some interesting questions.
Oh, like what?
Like, what happens when personal truths clash,
Mm.
right? How do we navigate a world where everyone has their own interpretation of reality?
Yeah, those are definitely questions worth pondering.
They are.
And perhaps that's the point. The speaker isn't necessarily providing all the answers.
Right. Instead, they're inviting us to embark on a journey of self-discovery, to question everything,
Yeah.
and to ultimately find our own truth.
Okay, I think we need a moment to process all of that.
Yeah,
It's incredible how much ground we've covered in just this first part of our deep dive.
I know, right? We've gone from hidden codes to the Phoenicians to symbolism to personal journeys.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
We've explored the speaker's ideas about hidden codes, the power of symbolism, the importance of personal experience, and their unique perspective on faith and spirituality.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much more to unpack in this audio file.
But before we dive into the next part of our deep dive, I want to pose a question to you and to our listeners.
Okay.
What stands out to you the most? What questions are you still grappling with? And how do you think these ideas might relate to your own life and experiences?
It's a lot to think about.
It is. We'll be back in just a moment to continue our exploration of this fascinating and thought-provoking material. Stay tuned. So, it's fascinating how this speaker kind of weaves their personal journey into this whole discussion of truth and meaning.
Yeah.
Talk about facing these really intense challenges, even, demons and nightmares, but somehow finding strength and purpose through it all.
It's almost like they're suggesting that you have to go through the fire to understand what's truly important.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just sharing their story for the sake of it. It really adds a layer of authenticity, wouldn't you say? Like, hey, I've been there.
Oh, absolutely. It's like they've been to the depths, as they say.
Yeah.
And they're using that experience to illustrate this idea of a spiritual war, a battle against these forces that are trying to keep us divided and in the dark.
And they're not afraid to shake things up. They specifically call out the worship of Yahweh, claiming to know the difference between that and the Father God.
Right.
What do you make of that? I mean, that seems pretty bold to challenge such fundamental religious beliefs.
It certainly is. And it could be jarring for some listeners.
Yeah.
But I think their point is that organized religion, as it's often practiced,
Right.
it can be a barrier to true spiritual understanding.
Right.
They're not rejecting faith entirely,
Okay.
but they're advocating for a more personal, less dogmatic approach.
That makes sense. It's about finding your own truth, not blindly following what others tell you.
Exactly.
It reminds me of what they said earlier about the Bible.
Yeah.
How they acknowledge different interpretations, different versions,
Right.
and even suggest that some parts might not accurately reflect the true Father God.
It's almost like they're saying, don't just take my word for it. Use your own discernment. Don't let anyone tell you what to think, even religious authorities.
Yeah.
They're urging us to think critically about these ancient texts,
Right.
not just accept them at face value.
They really want to spark the brain, as they say,
Right.
to get people thinking critically about their own beliefs and assumptions.
And that's a big ask, to question something as foundational as your faith.
It is.
But they're not suggesting we abandon faith entirely.
Right.
They keep referencing this spirit of truth,
Right.
which they describe as being part of the triune God as a guide to understanding.
So it seems like they're saying that we have the capacity for truth within us, but we have to actively seek it out.
Yes. Do the work, the research, the soul searching.
Right.
It's not just going to fall into our lap.
And it's not just about intellectual knowledge either. They talk about the importance of humility and an open mind.
Right.
Being willing to be wrong, to learn, to let go of old beliefs that might be holding you back. Would you say that resonates with their emphasis on walking the middle path?
Oh, absolutely. It's about avoiding extremes.
Right.
That black and white thinking that can keep us stuck.
Yeah.
And they tie this concept to some really interesting ideas.
Hmm.
They even bring up martial arts as an analogy.
What do you make of that?
It's unexpected, but thought-provoking, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is.
They talk about finding balance within yourself. That centeredness that allows you to move with grace and power, even in the face of challenges.
It's like they're suggesting that life itself is a form of martial arts.
Yeah.
We need that same balance, that awareness, that ability to adapt and respond to whatever comes our way.
And they specifically talk about honestly expressing yourself in martial arts. Not putting on a show, not trying to be someone you're not.
Does that remind you of anything else they've said?
It definitely connects back to their emphasis on authenticity, on being true to yourself.
Right.
They're saying that true strength comes from aligning with your deepest self, not from trying to fit into some external mold.
It's a powerful message. And they go even further. They're suggesting that this ability to shine isn't some special gift,
Right.
reserved for a select few. They believe everyone has the potential to access this inner power, but it takes courage and self-belief to tap into it.
Yeah, it's about recognizing your own worthiness.
It's inspiring, but it also raises a question for me. They talk a lot about their own struggles, their own darkness.
Right.
How does that fit into this message of empowerment? Is it helpful to dwell on those negative experiences?
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
But I think they're using their experiences to show that even those who seem to have it all figured out,
Right.
they go through tough times. It's relatable. It normalizes those feelings of self-doubt and brokenness that I think a lot of us experience.
They're saying, look, I'm not some guru who has it all figured out.
Yeah.
I've been through the mud, I've made mistakes, but I've learned from them, and you can too.
Exactly. And they frame those struggles as a necessary part of the journey. It's about recognizing that even our darkest moments can be opportunities for growth and transformation. It's about finding that balance within ourselves, that harmony between the light and the shadow.
And it's about recognizing that we're not alone in this journey.
Right.
Whether it's through a higher power, a community, or even that spirit of truth within ourselves, there's always support available.
That's a comforting message.
Yeah.
And it leads to their idea of sparking the brain that will change the world. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
It sounds a bit grandiose.
It does, yeah. But I think they're getting at something deeper.
Good.
It's not about waiting for some grand opportunity to change the world. It's about the small acts of courage and kindness, the moments when we choose to show up as our true selves.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, that our actions have consequences, and that even the smallest spark can ignite a fire of change.
Right. It's about those everyday choices we make, how we treat each other, how we engage with the world around us.
Exactly.
They're saying we have the power to make a difference starting right here, right now.
And they connect this idea of personal transformation to something larger, whether it's God or Black Jesus or whatever resonates with you.
Right.
They're suggesting that there's a force greater than ourselves that's guiding and supporting us.
It's a message of hope, of resilience, of the transformative power of love.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together, and that together we can create a world that's worthy of our highest aspirations.
It's about remembering that we're not just physical beings, but spiritual beings having a human experience.
Right.
And by connecting to that deeper part of ourselves, we can tap into a source of wisdom and power that can guide us through even the most challenging times.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we have a spiritual dimension to our existence.
It's a call to awaken to our true potential, to embrace our unique gifts, and to live a life that's aligned with our deepest values.
But they're also realistic. They acknowledge that this isn't always easy.
Right.
They talk about their own struggles, their own need to crawl out of darkness and negativity.
It makes me think of their emphasis on service, on using our gifts and talents to make a positive impact on the world.
Right.
It's like they're saying that our personal growth isn't just for ourselves. It's about recognizing that we're part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And that we have a responsibility to contribute to the greater good.
It's a very inspiring message. And it comes full circle back to their own experiences. They walk the talk.
Yeah.
They face their demons and come out the other side with this unwavering faith in humanity and the power of love.
Right.
They're living proof that transformation is possible.
It's amazing how they weave together these seemingly disparate ideas.
I know.
Martial arts, spirituality, biblical interpretation, personal transformation. It all feels connected, part of a larger tapestry.
It's like they're saying, hey, the world might be a mess.
Yeah.
But we have the power to change it. We just have to start with ourselves.
Yeah.
And they're giving us a roadmap, a set of tools, a way of thinking about the world and our place in it.
And it all comes down to choice. They're not forcing their beliefs on anyone. They're simply offering a different perspective, a different way of being.
Right.
It's like they're saying, hey, this is what works for me. Maybe it will resonate with you too. But ultimately, you have to find your own path.
It's a message of empowerment and responsibility.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we have the power to create the life we want,
Right.
the world we want. But it starts with looking inward,
Yeah.
with understanding ourselves,
Right.
with embracing our wholeness.
I think this deep dive has given us a lot to ponder, wouldn't you say?
I completely agree. It's challenged us to think differently about the world, about ourselves, and about our role in creating a more just and compassionate future.
Right.
We've explored some fascinating concepts, but there's always more to discover.
But before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I want to pose a question to you and to our listeners. What resonated with you the most from this discussion? What are you still grappling with? How do these ideas connect with your own life and experiences? We'll be back soon to wrap up our exploration of this intriguing audio. So, welcome back to our deep dive. I don't know about you, but I'm still processing all the ideas we've encountered in this audio. It's like a wild mix of history, spirituality, and personal reflection,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. And what strikes me is how the speaker manages to weave it all together into this message of empowerment. Like they're saying, hey, you have everything you need within you to navigate this world and create a meaningful life.
Yeah, it's like they're giving us a pep talk for the soul.
Yeah, exactly.
Like urging us to trust ourselves, our intuition, and to have the courage to be who we truly are, even when the world's trying to tell us otherwise.
And what I find refreshing is they're not promising, some perfect blissful state.
Right.
They acknowledge the messiness of life, the ups and downs, the light and the shadow. It's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
integrating all parts of ourselves, not striving for some unattainable ideal.
It's a very grounded approach to spirituality, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's not about denying our humanity, but embracing it with all its complexities and contradictions.
Right. Yeah.
It's about recognizing that the journey itself is the reward.
Absolutely. And that journey isn't meant to be traveled alone. The speaker keeps emphasizing the importance of connection, whether it's with a higher power, a community, or even that spirit of truth within ourselves.
Yeah. They're reminding us we have support available, if we're open to receiving it.
I think that's such an important point, especially in a world that can feel so isolating. We're bombarded with all these messages telling us to strive for independence, to go it alone.
Right.
But the speaker's reminding us that we're wired for connection. We need each other.
Right. We're social creatures.
And there's strength and vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, they even go further, suggesting that our struggles, like those demons and nightmares they talk about,
Right.
are not something to be ashamed of. They can actually be powerful opportunities for growth and transformation.
It's almost like a radical idea, isn't it?
Yes.
To see our challenges not as obstacles to overcome, but as stepping stones on our path to wholeness.
Yeah, it's about reframing our perspective, seeing the potential for growth, even in the midst of pain.
It makes me think of the Japanese art of kintsugi. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
Where they repair broken pottery with gold.
Right.
Highlighting the cracks rather than hiding them.
Beautiful metaphor, yeah, for how our wounds can become sources of strength and beauty.
That's a perfect analogy. And it ties into this whole idea of embracing our wholeness.
Yes.
Right? Both the light and the shadow, integrating all parts of ourselves, even the messy, imperfect parts.
Because it's in that wholeness, in that integration, that we find our true power, our true beauty.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we are enough, just as we are.
Right. Flaws and all.
Flaws and all.
And that leads to their idea of sparking the brain that will change the world. How do you interpret that? Because it could sound a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like each of us has to single-handedly solve all the world's problems.
I don't think that's what they're saying at all. I think it's about recognizing that each of us has a unique role to play in creating a better world. It's not about, grand gestures or heroic feats.
Right.
But about those small, everyday acts of courage, kindness, compassion.
It's about showing up as our authentic selves, using our voices, our talents, our resources to make a positive impact.
Yeah, in our own communities.
In our own spheres of influence.
And beyond.
And beyond, yeah. It's about remembering that we're all connected.
Yes.
That our actions have consequences.
Right.
And that even the smallest spark can ignite a fire of change.
Absolutely.
And they tie this idea of interconnectedness to something larger,
Oh.
whether you call it God, the universe, or simply a force for good in the world.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we're part of something bigger than ourselves and that we have a responsibility to contribute to the well-being of all.
Yeah.
It's a very inspiring message, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a call to action, but also a call to surrender,
Yeah.
to trust that we're being guided, supported, and loved, even when we can't see the bigger picture.
Yeah. It's about finding that balance between effort and surrender, taking action and trusting the process.
Right.
Recognizing that we're both powerful creators and humble participants in the grand scheme of things.
It's a beautiful paradox, isn't it?
It is. And that brings us back to the speaker's emphasis on the middle path.
Yeah.
On finding that balance between extremes. It's a message that feels incredibly timely and relevant, especially in a world that can feel increasingly polarized and divided.
Yeah. It's a reminder that truth often lies somewhere in between
Right.
the extremes.
Not on the fringes.
We need to be willing to listen to different perspectives,
Yeah.
to find common ground,
Yeah.
build bridges rather than walls.
It's about cultivating compassion, understanding, and a willingness to see the world through the eyes of others,
Yeah.
recognizing that we're all in this together, even when we disagree.
It's about honoring our shared humanity.
Right. And I think that's ultimately what the speaker is trying to convey in this audio file. It's a message of hope, of resilience, of the transformative power of love.
It's a reminder that we have the capacity to create a better world, but it starts with each of us doing our part.
Right. Showing up authentically.
Showing up.
Embracing our wholeness.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey exploring this audio with you.
Yes.
We've covered a lot of ground, from hidden codes and ancient mysteries to personal transformation and the power of the human spirit.
It's been a whirlwind tour of consciousness.
It has. We've delved into esoteric concepts, pondered profound questions, hopefully sparked some new insights and perspectives for our listeners.
I hope so.
But as with any deep dive, the real exploration begins after we resurface.
Right.
So we encourage you to continue reflecting on these ideas, to see how they resonate with your own experiences, and find ways to integrate them into your own life.
To make them your own.
Right. And remember, the journey is the reward.
Embrace the challenges. Celebrate the triumphs. And never stop seeking your own truth.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep shining your light.
And we'll see you soon.